All right, and hello everybody, and welcome back. I'm glad you're here. We're continuing our discussion about the hydraulic cylinder and these robots. Let's just see here what we got. Oh, yeah, that's pretty. Let's see. Sparks Lane in the Great Smoky Mountains. Oh, North Carolina. I know about that state. This is why we're making a walking robot, to just walk along down a road like this. Why not? Okay. And we'll get our guys back, and we need to look at one other thing here. And it is to say again, I'm glad you're here, and welcome. I do have a YouTube channel named Patrick Gray, and I invite you to subscribe. I think you would like the channel. I have stuff on there, not just about robots. And it's there in my website. I have a website, and there's stuff about robots and not about robots. We're talking about robots right now. You go to the menu, and then you go Pistonrobot, and you can see the topics. And I always want to mention a physically real object could hurt somebody. So if you're going to create a physically real object, you need to manage it in a manner that is reasonable and safe and legally allowed. And if you cannot manage a physically real object, at least meeting those criteria, then my suggestion is don't create it. I feel like somehow I'm working to save something that should be there. Again, I told you that the hydraulic cylinder is really all of this: the connection, the cylinder, the piston rod, the piston itself, and the other connection. It's like everybody's on a boat and they've picked up the hydraulic cylinder and they're getting ready to throw it off the side of the boat into the ocean. And I'm saying, well, let's slow down a little bit here, folks. And I do, as you can see, these guys walking along, or girls walking along here. Another thing I would like to mention is I think the concentration should be just make a robot that can walk along. It can walk along with military troops. And wherever they can walk, it can walk. I think maybe it's not so important to keep trying to figure out something that would make people want to buy it. I believe if you had a robot that could walk along, maybe carry a 30-pound pack, it runs on fossil fuel because it will need to, so that it can walk along for 8 or 12 hours, and nobody needs to do anything to it. They don't have to fix anything or add anything or switch a battery. It just walks along. I think there would be a lot of interest in that. And I did show you these stances, and I'm sure somebody's going to say, so where did those stances come from? And my answer is, I did that. I created them. Human beings have been walking for 200,000 years, maybe 2 million. There's going to be some optimization, particularly compared to robots that have been walking for 15 years. I think compared to robots, human beings are just godlike, ultra perfection level walking items. Human beings know more about walking than a robot will ever know. I think anybody, if you wanted to say, all right, let's get a robot that's walking, and we're going to start out and do one cycle, one stride. So the right foot is holding the robot up and is back. And the left foot comes forward and the left foot gets put down. And when the left foot gets put down, the right foot gets picked up and the right foot swings forward and the right foot is brought all the way forward and then put down. And then the left foot is brought up and is this pose. The next pose after this pose, or stance, is this one over here. And so I divided it into 23 stances. And so if you wanted to start out with the left foot in the air and the right foot down, and you want to get it up to the left foot down and the right foot in the air, that's 12 stances. So the distance that the left foot has to travel from here to there in the stance, that's how far forward you have to index it for each of these poses. And at the same time, all of the weight is on the right leg, but you have to switch the weight over to the left leg. The way you can lift up the right leg is the left leg has to be holding the weight of the robot. See, the right in here, the left leg is headed for the ground, and right there it touches the ground, and here is the right leg beginning to lift up. So not only do you have to index the left leg forward, you have to tilt the robot from where it was tilting off to the right, where the weight of the robot was over the right leg, to being a robot. It may not be easy to show, but here you can see we have a robot that is tilted off to the left. The weight of the robot is beginning to be over the left foot. So not only do you have to index the leg forward, but you have to lean the robot. But anybody can do that. These stances are not that hard to do. I think if you took any group of people and said, okay, here is this robot right here, and we're going to move it forward by 1/12, what is the next stance going to look like? I think they would be able to come up with this stance without much work at all. And you can run hydraulic lines to this robot, have a pump over here creating the pressure. I think this would be a cool installation at the Museum of Modern Art, where people would dial in what they wanted the legs to do and then let it walk and see what happens. I think human beings will be very good. I think one of the main advantages of a hydraulic cylinder-based robot is that you can make an absolute duplicate of the human. Not only the joints, the proportions of the joints, the weight of the robot, and the speed with which it can move. And so that is an advantage of the hydraulic cylinder. And I know that someone might be going, oh yeah, well, what makes you so confident that hydraulic cylinder can get that robot to move around like that? And that is another analysis that I want to do here. And let's look carefully at moving this leg around. Now, there is the upper leg, there is the lower leg, there's some of the hydraulic cylinders that move it. This is the upper leg, that's the lower leg. That's what they look like. And the question is, what is going on there? And I made this out of 6063 T6 aircraft alloy aluminum, 0.09 pounds per cubic inch. The volume of the thigh is 14 cubic inches. The volume of the leg is 12 cubic inches. The foot is 4.9 cubic inches. So the total weight of those three things is about 2.5 pounds. So let's set the total weight of the leg, the whole right leg with all that stuff on there, to be 12 pounds. And the question is, can these hydraulic cylinders move the leg around? And remember, I'm going to say human beings' muscles move at a maximum rate of 15 centimeters per second, and they achieve their maximum rate in 150 milliseconds. So that's all we have to do. If our robot can do that, and our robot has the exact proportions of a human and the range of motion of a human, then we don't have to worry about whether our robot will walk or not. We know it will, because humans can walk. So if they can walk, it can walk. And we look at the robot, and we look at this leg here, and we can look at the distance from the pivot point of the leg for flexion and extension is right there. And that distance is from here to here. And these hydraulic cylinders have to move that leg. And the pivot point for abduction and adduction is this point right in here. And this hydraulic cylinder is what causes abduction and adduction. And the robot is leaning to the right so that it can lift up its left leg. And so in order for this hydraulic cylinder to move it, we need to look at what kind of forces it is moving it against a leverage. So the distance from the pivot point to the attachment point is 3.84 inches. The length from the hip to the foot, 26 inches. 2/3 of the way down is 17 inches for flexion and extension. On abduction, adduction, again, the connection point and the pivot point is 3.84 inches. The whole length is 32 inches, and the 2/3 area is 21 inches. And so if you're moving the attachment point at 15 centimeters per second, the ratio means that this foot will be moving at 102 centimeters per second. And if you want to, you can take all the mass of the leg and say that it's on or equal to 12 pounds. And in a lot of the physics calculations, you can place that mass at 2/3 of the distance. So the question becomes, if it weighs 12 pounds and it's moving at 67 centimeters per second, which is 2/3 of the way down, and it's going to go from 0 to 67 centimeters per second in 150 milliseconds, what is needed to do that for a weight that's 12 pounds? And 0 to 67 centimeters in 150 milliseconds happens in 5 centimeters of travel and gives an acceleration of 14.7 feet per second squared. 14.7 feet per second squared as an acceleration against a weight of 12 pounds requires a force of 5 pounds. And this little piston has a surface area of 0.7 inches, and if we run it at 800 psi, which is a very low pressure for hydraulic systems, it's making 574 pounds of force. And so what does that mean? It means these pistons are not going to have any trouble whatsoever moving these limbs around at the rate that human beings move them, which means we're meeting our criteria. We have the rate, we have the power, we have the proportion, we have the joints. I think we can have a robot that walks along as a human being, and it's only because we're using hydraulic cylinders. The rotary encoders are not going to allow this, because they, in this amount of space, the three requirements are how much volume and weight it is, how fast it can move, and how much force it creates. You have to meet all three criteria. That's what the rotary encoders can't do. And here we have a leg. Go find a leg for a 200-pound robot with rotary encoders that weighs 12 pounds. It doesn't I don't think it exists. It's not as simple as this. And these hydraulic cylinders have plenty of, and the reason they have this much force is so they can move around the weight of the robot, but they can certainly move the leg to the rate of motion that we need. And she is, again, you know, there's sort of one of those female signals. She's clapping her hands and pointing her palms at me, and that's a secret message of stop talking, you are done. So I will stop, and I'm going to show some other videos, ways that we can get balanced walking using that concept of stances, but that's another set of lectures. All right, sorry, I got her permission to talk quickly. This is in SketchUp. Here is the leg. This is the surface area of that leg is 1.4 square inches. T6 aluminum has a yield strength of 30,000 pounds per square inch. So this thing can take 30,000 pounds of tensile stress. Compressive stress is usually half that, 15,000. So what that means is this is more than strong enough to hold up the weight of the robot. And this is where I got the volume of it is, if you click on it, you get the volume of 14 inches, cubic inches. And this is the calculator using the uniformly accelerated, started at 0, it goes up to 67 centimeters per second in 0.15 seconds, which is 150 milliseconds, and it takes a displacement of 5 centimeters and generates a acceleration of 14.7 feet per second squared. So that's what I use to do that calculation. All right, I'm really going to say so long. I'll make another video, and we're going to work on our good friend, the hydraulic cylinder, and try to save him or save her.